Hey guys, welcome to Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. It's time for question and answer episode 5. Okay, my question and answer series, I try to answer questions from you guys who have responded to my request for questions, and you've got a whole bunch of them for me, so I've got tons of questions saved up for the next several episodes, so thank you so much for that. I want to get to some of these answers as best I can. Some of the questions you ask I don't have an answer for because I don't know. And like I always say, I'm not going to tell you stuff I don't know. And what I tell you is just the way I do it and the way I understand things. And that's always prone to change as we learn and we grow. But that's why we have question and answers, and that's why we watch YouTube videos, so we can learn, grow, adapt our gardening methods to whatever works for us, and as we learn, we change. So, on to the question. Okay, question number 1. Ginger Kirby, Vera Campbell, Shad Mango, and Daisy Stink 1 all had similar questions about grow lights. Ginger says she'd love to see what grow lights I use, and Vera Campbell asked the same things for starting my seeds, what grow lights. Shad says, when starting seeds with grow lights, at what stage do I move the seedlings further from the lights, at what distance? Leggy seedlings are a problem. I'm going to link you to a video right there, and that will show you what I use for my grow lights. Currently, I'm still using fluorescent tubes. I have a 6-bulb setup by, you can buy them by different company names, probably made in China somewhere, but they use T5 bulbs, and I've got 6 T5 bulbs. You want to look for grow lights that have a particular lumen rating and Kelvin rating, and off the top of my head, I'm not going to remember those, so go watch that video that I'll link you to. I just now started some seedlings, and I have all about lights in there. But about leggy seedlings, I like to keep my light very close to my seedlings, an inch actually when they first get started, if I can, or an inch from the humidity dome. If you use those cheap Jiffy seed starting trays, which I actually really enjoy, I put the light right on top of that until the seeds come up. And then I keep the light about an inch or maybe 2 inches from my seedlings. When I'm growing tomatoes, for example, people always complain about leggy tomatoes. I don't really care about leggy tomatoes because you can just plant those deeper when you go and put them out in your garden. So leggy tomatoes don't bother me, but if it bothers you, just keep the light as close as possible to the plant so that they're not touching. About an inch to 2 inches is always a good general rule. Okay, question 2. Shelby Beasley asks, what does your garden planning process look like? And Brett White says he's in zone 5B, 6A, and he's lost as to how to lay out his garden. He doesn't want things to shade out other things, and that's very real concern. These beds are oriented north to south. That is literally north, and behind me is south. And so the sun tracks over, and then my house eclipses the sun largely in the latter part of the day. However, that slope on my house gives my garden quite a nice drenching of sun and a good long 12 to 14 hours of sun, 10 to 12 hours of sun all day long. So it's almost a full sun garden. And so if they ran this way, it wouldn't be as efficient. But being north to south, the sun covers the entire stretch of my garden in a 180 degree arc until my home shades it out in the evening. But what that involves then is avoiding shading out one bed with plants in the other, and I think that's what you're talking about. For the most part, if you have a good full day of sun, you don't have to worry about shading out your beds if you've oriented them north to south, because even if I have corn that's 8 feet tall, and I did have corn in that first bed 8 feet tall last summer, the plants over here get plenty of sun because, well, I've got 180 degrees of sun almost. So they got plenty of sun, they did just fine. However, if I was up against a house and I only got a half day of sun, I would try to avoid growing tall varieties. If I was growing things like tomatoes and they got to be 4 or 5 feet tall, I would top them to keep from shading out my other plants. So you just really have to kind of take a survey of where your shadows fall. And so what I suggest is coming out in the morning, early in the morning when the sun comes up, and take little sketches and log where your shadows are in your yard, and watch them seasonally because they will progress in different places during different seasons. Let me show you a bit of garden. So when I started my garden, I placed it right here and noticed that whenever my house cast a shadow in the springtime, it was right along the edge of that bed. And so what I did is I put an extension on here, and this shadow right here, this square shadow, is a raised portion of my home, and it travels this way in the evening. And so in the fall, you can see it's going to cover my whole bed. But in the springtime and in the summer, that shadow will move this way. So this section of the garden will get more sun. And so those are things you can think about and learn about as you track your shadows through the seasons and keep good notes of where your shadows fall, and you can plan accordingly. When I first planted my garden, it was over in this area. I had 1, 2, 3 raised beds right here, and I didn't know a lot about the sun. I didn't really plan it out well because the tall part of my house is right here. My neighbor has trees, and I had some small trees that grew up to be very large trees. And so it wasn't but 3 or 4 years when those beds were no longer productive because they were in perpetual shade. Shelby's question was probably more about what kinds of varieties do I plant, and what does my planting process look like, perhaps including crop rotation and things like that. Shelby, I just grow what I like to grow, and I don't really do a whole lot of crop rotation. On a small scale like this, where I'm remineralizing and fertilizing the soil every single season, it's not really an issue unless I have some kind of a plant disease that I want to minimize. Then I won't plant the same plant in the same spot for 2 or 3 years. I plan using a sketch pad, and then I often will do a diagram in Adobe Illustrator. You could use a gardening planning software. You could use your notebook, whatever. But I really just plan based on what I want to grow. And then I try to find, okay, how long does it take to grow? What's going to follow it? And when do I need to start those seeds to follow my planting? Because when you're pulling stuff up out of a block planted section, say you got a bunch of radishes and you pull stuff out, you have holes in your garden. I like to have things I can plug in. Lynn Price. Lynn, I've answered some of your questions before, haven't I? Lynn Price asks a fun question. If I could grow only 5 vegetables, which 5 would I grow versus purchase at the local supermarket? That question has some nuance. It depends on what your gardening goals are. If I was a sustenance farmer and I was trying to provide for my family solely from my garden, my choice of vegetables would look a whole lot different than it does for the kind of garden I am actually growing, which is just a hobby garden, and I'm growing to supplement my family's vegetables. And so each answer is different. So if I was growing a sustenance garden, if I was growing to survive or to provide food for my family, then I would grow for calories, I would grow for nutritional value, I would grow for long storage, long harvests, long continual harvests, and long storage. Because if you're trying to maintain yourself and eat your food, you don't want all your crop coming in at once and you have to eat it all or it goes bad. So then in cases like that, in cases of sustenance garden, you have to learn preserving methods, you have to learn fermentation, you have to learn how to keep your food viable. In that case, if it was just me trying to survive with my family, I would grow things like sweet potatoes, I would grow small pumpkins, because pumpkins store really well. I would grow beets or turnips because they're very nutritious and you can use the root and you can use the leaves. I would grow perpetual spinach, which is a leafy green. I think you probably need to have a leafy green just so you can tolerate eating your food and have some variety. And I found that perpetual spinach, which is actually a Swiss chard that tastes like spinach, it tolerates my summers here, and it'll grow perennially if you take care of it. And then I would also succession plant something like some legume, like a cowpea, because cowpeas, not only you can eat the cowpea, you can eat the whole plant, but they're good for the soil. So those are my 5 if I was trying to survive off the land. But I'm not. I am a small backyard hobby gardener. The whole kind of gist of my channel is small garden in limited space. And I grow for mainly culinary things. I like to bring supplemental food into my house, and I like to cook. And so I like to grow good food to cook with. So in that circumstance, I want to grow tomatoes, because I love tomatoes, and the junk they sell at the grocery store, those aren't tomatoes. They're awful. I can hardly eat them now. So that's why I like to grow tomatoes. I would grow a good spicy pepper, like a jalapeno or a cayenne. I would grow some sort of a leafy root, again, like a beet or like a turnip, because of the dual purpose. You can eat the root, you can eat the greens. And I would grow a green bean, and I would grow onions, bulbing onions. All of those perfect goods to bring into your kitchen, and that's why I would choose those. And with both of these, I assume that I can supplement with growing tons of herbs, because herbs you can grow anywhere. So I hope that answers your question. Kind of fun to think about. You know, what's the best 5 varieties of vegetables that you can grow to survive on or to supplement your kitchen? Leave me a comment. What do you think about that? All right, Ambry Williams asks, I'm curious to find out if you've planned any more gardening experiments for 2020. I'm not sure you could call them experiments, but I do plan to repeat my pumpkin pits, and I'm going to start them much earlier to see if I can't get a harvest. That's kind of experimental for me. I don't know that they're truly qualify as an experiment, like comparing this versus that and using a control. But yeah, I'm going to do my pumpkin pits this year, and then I'm going to experiment with intercropping all my gardens instead of block planting them. So I'll have a bed that has everything I'm going to grow this spring is going to be spread throughout my 3 beds. Actually, now I have 5 beds, but I'm going to spread them out and plant them in and amongst one another instead of having one big block of tomatoes, one big block of cucumbers, one big block of this or that. So that's kind of experimental. It's really not. People have been doing it all the time. And the reason I'm doing that is I want the diversity of flora to be in my garden to confuse pests. But mainly I want to bring in pollinators, and I'm going to put flowers and different kinds of flowers all throughout my garden. So I'm going to spread everything around and see how that changes the garden this year. Okay, our last question is a pretty important question. Green Love and Rick D both want to know about the seeds dampening off. Green Love says dampening off is a big problem in my seeds, even though there's a mild climate and dry climate in Northern California. What measures can be taken to prevent it and then treat it? And then Rick D says, why mine died down after sprouting as little leaves? What would be the most common pitfall? Not enough light, not enough water, wrong soil, wrong medium. Dampening off is usually what is the term used to describe when your seedlings sprout, but then they die. They look like they've been literally chewed off, or they've wilted and they fall over. Dampening off is caused by several varieties of fungus or from parasites, and the remedy is there are several steps you can take. First, like I said in my seed starting videos, always start with sterile seed starting mix. Usually the fungal spores are in the soil that you're starting your plants in, and a damp, cold environment is going to wake those spores up. So a sterile seed starting mix is the most important thing that you can do to prevent dampening off. Then your trays. Clean and sterilize your trays as well. If you've had problems with dampening off in the past, you definitely want to clean, wash, get all that grit from last season out of there, and sterilize them. Chlorine bleach is fine, a solution of that. If you're not into chlorine bleach, then you can use, hospitals use chlorine, it's safe. If you don't want to use that, they make products that are organic that you can sterilize your seed trays with. Warmth. You want your seeds to start in a warm environment because that helps to suppress fungal growth. Fungi thrive in a cool environment. A little bit warmer, say 78, 80, 85 degrees. That might be a little high on some germination charts, but that will help suppress your fungal growth and dampening off. Also, air circulation. If you're using a humidity dome, you're not going to get much air circulation, but when those seeds come off and you start taking that humidity dome off, you want to make sure that there's at least a circulating fan or a ceiling fan or something nearby that's keeping the air from just hanging low. How to treat it. They make fungicides that you can mix into your starting mix, and they make seeds that are also inoculated with a fungicide as well. But sadly, by the time you discover dampening off, it's too late. There's nothing you can do about it except start over. So dampening off is a real frustration. Start with clean stuff, clean and sterile stuff. All right, well, there's our questions for episode 5. If I didn't get to yours, I'll get to it in a future episode, hopefully. And yeah, I chose the questions for episode 5 based on the season. People are talking about planting gardens and planting their crops and sowing seeds, and so I thought they were timely. Hey, we hit 25,000 subscribers. In fact, we're at 25,400 or so as of this recording, and so I'm so grateful, so humble that you follow our channel. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for all the ideas we've exchanged over the past couple of years. I'm really grateful. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so and click that bell down there. You'll get notified when we upload another video. We try to aim for 1 a week. In the spring, sometimes it's 2 or 3 a week. So yeah, we're glad to have you along. Hey, follow us on Instagram too, Black Gumbo Southern Gardening, and follow us on Facebook, and happy gardening to you. Bye-bye.